Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Truth, guys. Aston Villa have been one of the hot topics of the Premier League so far. Sam, as you know, is an Aston Villa fan. Today we discuss what the hell is going on at Villa Park. Jack is in the hot seat as ever. On with the show. Hello everybody and welcome back to The Truth podcast. I'm Dougie Critchley and today I'm joined as ever by Sam Tighe, who is playing the guest kind of role today because we are talking all things Aston Villa. But before we get into that, how are you, Sam?
I'm okay.
Good.
Do you believe me?
A little bit. You said it with a little bit of trepidation in your voice.
Yes, it was a tough watch again at the weekend. My favourite Premier League game week so far this season has been the one that I spent in Latvia, so I couldn't watch Villa.
It has been a little bit challenging.
Yes.
It has been a little bit challenging. We'll get into the events of what went down at the Stadium of Light in due course.
You must be happier though.
I'm absolutely delighted. I'm loving the Premier League so far. I mean, as we've talked about in previous episodes, we needed to take advantage of a favourable run of fixtures at the start of the season. But Crystal Palace and Villa in our last two points from those, despite going down for 10 men to Aston Villa in the first half. Yeah, absolutely take that. But let's introduce to the floor Mr. Jack Collins. How are we doing, Jack?
I'm good, thank you, Dougie. How are you?
Very well. You have got the mighty Villa this weekend.
Yeah.
The derbies continue, the truth derbies.
Can't wait.
It's relentless. It's relentless.
The good news from a Villa perspective, I think, is that Fulham very, very rarely win at Villa Park.
Correct.
This is not a fixture that's been kind to us down the years. So any sort of excitement about the fact that Villa feel like they're in a bit of a rut is always kind of tempered, shall we say, by the fact that Fulham just famously don't do well here. But we'll see. Weirder things have happened, and obviously riding the crest of 2 wins in a row from a Fulham perspective, all's well at the Cottage.
So presumably everyone facing Villa from this point is all their fans are going to be saying the same thing. Oh, it will be against us that they click into gear when it'll sort itself out. It'll definitely be the game. I'll happen to be that we face Villa at that point. They'll all be thinking that. I mean, I hope it's sooner rather than later, and I hope that Villa can crawl out of this, and it's what we're going to be discussing today.
Absolutely. It is worth noting that there are a full round of Carabao Cup fixtures as well. So Fulham are playing Cambridge United tonight, but more importantly, you guys are playing Bologna this week in the Europa League as well. So maybe some momentum has been gathered, but whatever happens in that game, it is very much worth talking about what is going on at Aston Villa right now. I mean, Sam, why don't you set the scene for what I can imagine will be a little bit of a therapy session over the next 30 to 45 minutes or so.
You know, we had one of these in November.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten that.
So it's funny, you keep forgetting about the stuff we've done, because I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about an episode we'd done, and you were like, I have no memory of that.
I think there's just so much content that we're just flying through.
Yes, I've already had one therapy session in the last 12 months on Aston Villa on this podcast, and I guess I'm back in for a second session. That's fine. I'll try not to repeat myself too much, because we did, when we convened around the table for the first time this season, we did a little update about our transfer windows and how it had gone over the summer, and I did cover some of the difficulties that Villa had faced over the course of the summer. So I'll try not to repeat myself too much, but it's pretty key contextual info. So the summer definitely sets the tone for all of this, and it was a very, very challenging summer because of the financial cost controls that Villa are operating under. So it's obviously a lot of talk about PSR, but it's not really Premier League PSR that Villa have fallen foul of over the years. They've always managed to wriggle their way out of that one by selling themselves an asset or swapping a player, in inverted commas, whatever it might be. It's UEFA's cost controls that have been the real problem. And that is because UEFA do not accept the trickery that Villa have managed to produce, financially speaking, that the Premier League do. So UEFA do not accept selling yourself a hotel or a women's team, which is why Chelsea and Villa have ended up in settlement agreements and paying fines with UEFA, because that's not allowed to balance the books. And UEFA also take a fairly dim view of these swap deals that Villa have produced to try and balance the books, and they don't accept them. They remove them from the records. So whereas Villa, for Premier League purposes, are counting €50 million for the sale of Douglas Luiz, £19 million for the sale of Omari Kellyman to Chelsea and a women's team, UEFA accept none of this. So there's probably, I mean, obviously none of us have the figures, but I think a reasonable guess would be a minimum of £70 million disparity between what Premier League accepts as Aston Villa income and what UEFA have. So that will go some way to explaining why, from a UEFA position, there's so much further against the sword, basically. So, yeah, that's a tough starting point. Villa obviously been fined for this as well, for breaching UEFA's cost control rules. Their wage to turnover ratio and cost control, it's sky high. It's in the 90%. So they need to bring it down.
Quickly on that, why is it so high? How did it get so out of control? Under whose tenureship?
So basically, I mean, the short answer is Villa spend too much money compared to how much they earn. The longer answer is Villa sold Jack Grealish for a British record £100 million, and because he was an academy product, it was pure profit. Having £100 million worth of pure profit in your books allows you to do a hell of a lot for about 3 years, right? It's just an amazing buffer to have. Once that drops out of the books, So Villa were reckless in this period, and it's basically all pre-Emery. It's the Steven Gerrard, Christian Purslow, Johan Lange era, where they spent a lot of money on a lot of players that should have worked out better, and they put them on big contracts, like Robin Olsen as a backup goalkeeper.
The Dendonkers and the Coutinhos.
This is Coutinho, Dendoncker, Olsen, but it's also Diego Carlos and those guys. Leon Bailey, Buendia, for a lot of money, haven't worked out. Villa have eaten those costs, and once Grealish's sale falls out of the books, suddenly your revenue is significantly lower. So that's how Villa have ended up in this situation. They weren't particularly wise with their money and weren't particularly clever with their spending when they had that opportunity to really mount an offensive on the transfer market. And because those deals have had long-term effects in biting you in terms of costs, once that Grealish sale falls out of the 3-year accounting period, it's a disaster. And so the entire time that Emery and Monchi have been at Villa, they've been firefighting that situation, laden with a lot of costs and a lot of big deals that they didn't strike, that they couldn't get rid of, while also trying to become an upwardly mobile club. It's been very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we should probably maybe, before we get into the results of this season, touch on Monchi, because it's the big news breaking today as we record this on Tuesday that he is expected to leave the club. Like, this situation might have changed by the time you listen to this, but it does look pretty likely. There is a replacement lined up who we'll discuss in due course as well. But it does feel like Monchi is the one full guy of the season so far, because obviously you really don't want to get rid of Unai Emery, and that would be really premature given your results over the last few seasons. You can't bring in any players until at least January. Even then, you're going to be hamstrung by the same financial situation that you're in now. So Monchi is the full guy. And it's worth just sort of reflecting on his time at Aston Villa and his time before Aston Villa, because his time at Sevilla, which is where he made his name, was incredibly successful. Sevilla were a sort of struggling, even a second division club when he took over, and he'd been a goalkeeper there, retired in 1999. I think he took over as sporting director in 2000, won 2 Copa del Reys, but it was really in the Europa League that he made his name. 5 Europa Leagues. He helped develop the likes of Sergio Ramos and Jose Antonio Reyes and Jesus Navas. And then his signings in that period, often from particular use of Brazil or Brazilian players with Julio Baptista and Luis Adriano, and then the Rakitic era, etc.
Did he get Dani Alves?
Dani Alves as well. So successful. He then has that spell at Roma, doesn't go as well at Roma, signs a lot of players that never really materialise at Roma. I think Patrick Schick's obviously a talented player, has carved out a great career, same with Justin Kluivert, but at Roma don't have the same impact. Javier Pastore as well, real disasters. Returns to Sevilla and then leads them to 4th and 12th in his 3 seasons on his return there from March 2019 onwards. And that is a period that also sees them lose Jules Koundé and Diego Carlos. Diego Carlos, who then turns up at Villa. In his final season, they eventually finished 12th. But he arrives at Aston Villa, and I think...
So just the way you were talking about that made him sound like the manager the whole time?
Yeah.
He was never the manager.
He was never the manager. But he has a crucial role, and he arrives at Aston Villa, and things have been pretty rosy for the first 2 years, let's say. Particularly that first summer, Moussa Diaby arrives, Pau Torres arrives. I mean, how do you reflect on Monchi's job personally? And because I imagine there'll be some fans from the outside, and I even saw a journalist who I really respect in Rory Smith talking on the Monday Night Club about how Aston Villa have just spent way too much money, which I don't think is actually accurate, really. They've spent a lot of money to kind of free themselves up in their financial situation.
Yes. Wasn't sure that Rory hit the nail on the head there.
No.
Bit more nuance involved there. Just said that they, Villa have just spent. But net spend wise, Villa are down in the, I think, about 50 million euros over 2.5 years. net spend, and bear in mind Chelsea and Man United here are 500 million, and Arsenal, Spurs are 400 million, and Man City are 300 million all in net spend. So
there's only 3 clubs that made more money this summer in the Premier League.
yeah, Villa have juggled a lot of plates, and they have bought a lot of players, but they've sold a lot of players, which is kind of Monchi's wheelhouse, right? Like that's what he is good at. Like actually, you think about the situation Villa have been in, where you have to sell to buy to survive in the PSR era. You're constantly trying to build the revenue stream one way while also staying afloat or improve. You're just going to have to sell. You have to recycle through players. He's very good at that. That's all he did at Sevilla. Not through choice, it's because everyone wanted Sevilla's players and they bought them off him, so he had to replace them. So you could barely pick a better man for the job. But just to look at the Villa spend and gone, well, he's just spent tons and tons of money, is probably a little bit wrong. Like, he's done, I think he took on a very difficult job where the finances were basically literally about to turn against him. And he's had one hand tied behind his back quite a lot of the time, I think. The way I try to put it to people is like, of all the players that Monchi has signed for Aston Villa in the last 2.5 years, if you just gave him a blank check and a carte blanche PSR situation and said, Monchi, who do you want to sign? How many of those players would he have signed? Like not many, genuinely, because he would have signed better players if he had been given the opportunity to. And a lot of these deals, like Amadou Onana to Everton, Ian Maatsen from Chelsea, these are deals that are not. They're almost not real. Like, he was clearly in a situation where he was going to have to manufacture some revenue for PSR reasons, and that led to what UEFA considered swap deals. So in that situation, if your backs are against the wall and you need to get something out of it, well, you might as well bank on good, talented young players who you think Unai Emery, a very good coach, can improve, right? So you might as well go and get Ian Maatsen and say, if I give Ian Maatsen to Unai Emery, he could become a really good left-back. So that you come out of that swap situation with something that you can say, yes, we can move forward with this. You don't come out with it with a 29-year-old with sunk wages. You come out of it with a good young player. Onana is one of those. Maatsen is another one of those. And the Juventus swap with Douglas Luiz came out of it with Enzo Baranachea and Samuel Illing Jr. You know, a lot of fans are disappointed that Baranachea basically just had to go for cost reasons, and Illing Jr. is out on loan again. At least identify some young talent and go and get it in return, which I think he did a pretty good job of. And he was also, like, I've written down a few bits here I was trying to remind myself of the good bits, because bear in mind here, I don't know if you know this, but Villa Twitter has really turned against Monchi over the course of the summer, and the vibe wasn't great, which I thought was a little bit unfair. In fact, Monchi is probably a very good example of why this podcast even exists in the first place. Because when he signed for Villa, the fan base were like, he's a god, he's amazing. And I was stood there going, he's good, but he's not as good as you think he is. And now I'm stood at the other end going, he's not been as bad as you think he's been. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Like, this is it. This is the perfect situation to summarize it. But he was always really good at reacting to stuff. So when Jacob Ramsey did his metatarsal and then Emi Buendia tore his ACL on the eve of the season, okay, he wasn't a huge success, but he went out and grabbed Nicolo Zaniolo on loan. It's just quick thinking. Like, go and get a player who profiles very similarly. He was always good at that. Mings did his ACL, and he went and got Clement Lenglet, who was not great, but he was a good stylistic backup for Pau Torres. It made sense to have that player behind that player. Archer, sold for pure profit, bought him back, sold him again. Philogene, sold for pure profit, bought him back, sold him for a profit. Morgan Rogers for £8 million. We'll get on to how Rogers has been this season, and it's not been a pretty story, but the transfer itself was very, very good. Tielemans on a free, had to eat my own words on that. He was much better than I ever thought. He got rid of Diego Carlos for actual money, which was good. He managed to convince Boubacar Kamara to sign a new deal. I don't know how. And I personally think that what he did in January was amazing. Again, backs against the wall a little bit. Rather than get sucked into paying a huge amount of money for a John Duran replacement, which would be a backup to Watkins, having sold Duran for 60 odd million, he just loaned in Rashford and took a bit of a punt, sure. But I don't want to see a club spend £45 million on a backup striker because they've just sold their striker for 60. Just plug the gap for £5 million and address it later. This is good. This is good business. It's not reckless. It's actually like making sure that you don't have future costs being kicked down the road even further.
Well, for sure. And also, people are so quick to say, why didn't he go and sign Rashford or Asensio? You know, Rashford had a £40 million asking price in the summer. His wages are around £300,000 per week. I think that's more than something like that. It's more than double anyone at Aston Villa. And I think your highest earners are on about 150 to 180. And I think that's Tielemans, Camara and Emi Martinez. So it would be a huge financial commitment to sign Rashford. And he clearly had desires to go to Barcelona. So it's not just
he ever wanted to play and stick around here. Asensio did want to come back. And people are still a bit like, could that not have happened? And that's a bit confusing. But we don't. If Villa didn't sign Asensio this summer on permanently, means they genuinely could not, because everyone wanted that deal to happen, every single party, and that just tells you how strict and tight those finances were on those situations. Just to balance the argument a little bit on Monchi, because he's not been perfect, not by a long stretch. I don't really get the Donyell Marlon deal. I don't understand why. I'm struggling to still understand why that really happened, especially for 25 million. And
do you think it's a case to play devil's advocate, that you can play in a few different positions? That's handy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pace on the break.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no doubt there's uses for him, but obviously he signed in January and he couldn't get registered for the Champions League squad because Asensio, Rashford and Disasi took the spot. So it's always just felt slightly out of place, and I wasn't quite sure about that one. He's taken a few punts on young players, which I don't mind, but they haven't really borne fruit. But then again, it's been so fast paced that Emery hasn't hung around for them. So like Costa Nedeljkovic, Yasin Özcan, they're not good enough now, and Villa they need players right now that can impact, because they're just trying to qualify for the Champions League again. You don't get to ride along with the mistakes of a 19-year-old. And the one thing I will knock him on is, despite trying very, very hard, he has never yet managed to get a deal over the line to get a new right back. I mean, he's been close a few times, but he has never managed to get a proper right back in. And I'm not sure that reflects particularly well on him, because he had about 7 opportunities to do so.
Okay, we've kind of talked about what happened in the summer. We'll return to that, obviously, when we get a little bit deeper into what's gone wrong this season. But in terms of why we're talking about this topic, yes, there's the Monchi situation, but also results-wise, you know, I hate to remind you, you sit 18th at the moment with 3 points. You've drawn against Newcastle, Everton and Sunderland on the weekend, knocked out of the Carabao Cup by Brentford on penalties. It's really the goals for that feels the most troubling at the moment. Just 1 goal in 5 games. There's only 6 sides in Europe, which does include Gladbach and Torino, who have been useful at points in the last few years, that have scored only 1 goal. No one has scored less. And at the weekend, Ronaldo was sent off after 33 minutes. I was so frustrated with that. It was a really foolish thing to do, and I couldn't believe elements of Sunderland Twitter were trying to defend him. It was completely brainless for me. You did score through Matty Cash. You got that goal, that much-wanted goal. It was a horrendous goalkeeping error by Roofs, who has been really good this season, but he makes a hash of that.
But there was a lot of swerve on that shot.
A lot of swerve, but I think, come on, it wasn't great goalkeeping. Either way,
Jax has pulled a massive face at me. All right, fine, it was a mistake.
Of course it was a mistake. Of course it was a mistake. Like, he's been brilliant, so I'm not going to knock him. But yeah, obviously you should save that. Be fuming if Burnley don't let that in.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. Isidore equalised in the 75th minute. You did miss a massive chance to win it late on. You actually mentioned before we started recording the Marlon one-on-one where he doesn't get a shot off. But actually the Watkins effort, let's say, or lack of effort, he doesn't really connect with it from that Sancho cross. But despite playing against 10 men for an hour and having 71% of the ball, Sunderland had more shots on target and created more XG, just 0.7 XG for Villa at the weekend.
That does, to be fair, that does not include Watkins' header because he didn't make contact.
This is true.
So that's just a bit of jeopardy on the single game XG, but it probably would have been 1.3 if Watkins had made contact with that.
But kind of to lead you into what you've seen so far this season, on the back of that Sunderland game, that's obviously the most I've watched Villa, or the most intently I've watched Villa this season. Was that kind of the story of the season so far, that game? What do you think is going wrong? What have you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, this absolute nightmare scenario for Villa to have to play against 10 men.
I didn't realise you had such a terrible record against 10 men.
We've got a terrible record when we have all the ball. Which is a bit of a concern because that's kind of what Emery coaches. But there's a list of games in the last couple of years where Villa have had 70% of possession or more, and it's roughly 10 games, and Villa have won 1 of them. Dropped a lot of points against teams that really you've got no business dropping points to, including, do you remember when Villa were on that historic winning run at home? They won like 15 games in a row, and we drew to Sheffield United at home.
in that terrible Sheffield United season.
It was that, yeah,
Wow.
and that was the one that actually stopped the run. That was it. And it's always red and white stripes, and it's always when you don't expect it. Look, it's a team right now that is lacking a lot of confidence. So it's generally lacking zip on the ball. The ball isn't moving very quickly. These are all kind of Roy Keane cliches, but it is quite true. Villa are very ponderous with the ball. Unai Emery called the team lazy. I think he was talking about the defending for the goal, but I think he was also broadly just calling everyone a bit lazy, like expecting the game to just open up for you when you've got to put a bit of a zip on the pass and try and create the opening for yourself. And Villa aren't doing that. They're moving very methodically and too slowly with not much width. And at times this season, obviously 4 central midfielders on the pitch, which has been a big problem. First couple of games, Tielemans, Camara, Onana and McGinn all on the pitch at the same time with no wingers and not a lot of speed. It's been quite easy to defend. And Brentford got a goal on the counter in the second game and then just blocked the middle and sat there and went, you're not going to break us down because your wide men who are trying to take players on 1v1 are Luca Dean and John McGinn. They're not going to beat fullbacks 1v1, and they didn't. And there was no goal that day. So teams are kind of wising up to that. Then there's the Morgan Rogers issue.
Yeah.
This is very big.
People are really frustrated with him.
Well, he's been absolutely dreadful. And it's tough because everybody expects the world of Rogers, and
he played well for England as well. Which must be
yeah,
even
that
more
was
frustrating.
quite frustrating. But off the back of being crowned Young Player of the Year, you're expecting something pretty big, and yeah, he's been.
Is it lack of effort, lack of quality?
It's not a lack of effort. I could not accuse him of that. He had a good pre-season. He did pick up a little bit of an ankle knock, but he returned for the first game. I don't really know what it is outside of. Obviously, people are paying more attention to him now. Like, he's a bit of a marked man. He's playing in central areas, and there's not a lot of space there because we're playing very narrow. So constricting the pitch for yourself, and then it means that Rodgers is always kind of surrounded by 3 or 4 players, which is very difficult. But ultimately, those moments, where he gets the ball and he can turn and go, they've been so few and far between. The ball is bouncing off him right now, and he does go through these little periods where the touch looks really poor. Just a couple of stats for you, and just take them with a pinch of salt because it's only 5 games, and these explosive players, they do tend to fluctuate quite heavily in these stats. But successful dribble count has gone from 2.6 per 90 last year to 1.2. Unsuccessful touch count from 3.1 to 4. He's second in the league for that. Kudus is higher, and Jorginho Rutter is third. So you can tell that that type of player, you're going to have to take the rough with the smooth, but these numbers are skewing the wrong way. Can you guess how many passes he has completed to Ollie Watkins in 440 minutes?
Jack, why don't you have a guess?
None.
It's more than none.
No, damn.
440 minutes, 8?
It's 14.
Okay.
You went, 14
We
passes.
both went pretty low.
I just went for the nuclear option.
Talking of nuclear, guess how many passes Youri Tielemans has completed to Ollie Watkins in 315 minutes?
I'm guessing that it's
None.
slightly more.
Slightly more than none.
Like 5.
It's 2.
No way.
It's 2. Tielemans, the best progressor on the pitch, to Watkins, the only striker Villa have. 2 passes in 315 minutes. You're looking at Villa's build-up and you're watching them just like very methodically move the ball around very slowly. I say when the passes lack zip and they're not opening the game up for themselves. Tielemans has completed 2 passes to Watkins and Rodgers has completed 14 to Watkins. Watkins has sent 9 back to Rodgers the other way. Like, look, I'm not expecting fireworks, but you want your front 2 to be connecting a bit better than that. You want the base of your midfield and your best ball progressor to be connecting to the striker better than that, especially since Villa spent so long shifting the ball around to try and unlock that vertical pass that then opens the game up. It's not happening. So there are a lot of problems with the team, and it's not all about Rodgers and it's not all about Watkins, but their issues are so obvious and glaring that they are the ones that if Rodgers and Watkins were playing just slightly better, a lot of this wouldn't be anywhere near as bad.
Yeah. Just on the Watkins sort of issue, as it were, I wonder whether on the back of that season 23-24, where I think only Cole Palmer got more goals and assists in the league. It was something like 32, something like 33. It was a
lot of goal contributions.
Crazy amount. Like almost the perfect season for him. He then goes to the Euros, is understandably understudy to one of England's best ever strikers, captain Harry Kane, etc., but still gets on in that semi-final, scores that amazing goal against the Netherlands, etc. He then comes back last season and was being kind of chopped and changed a bit with John Duran.
He was so injured to start the season. It's so not fit, right?
Sure. But then even John Duran then leaves in January and he thinks, oh, great, this is kind of my moment. This is my team now. Rashford and Asensio arrive. And actually, I remember in the Champions League, I don't think he starts any of your final 3 games in it against Club Brugge and then the 2 PSG games. I think it's Rashford for all 3.
He didn't start either of the PSG games because he was furious about it.
It must be so frustrating because he tried and did more than anyone to get you into the Champions League the year before. And then he's not really being used in those key moments. Then in the summer, other players get their moves away. Rashford ends up at Barcelona, etc. I know Watkins wasn't going to be sold to Barcelona, for example, but maybe he's just slightly frustrated with how he kind of peaked a couple of years ago and he's not actually had that much reward for it.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a funny one. I mean,
that's maybe more of a psychology thing than a tactical thing.
No one. We can't pretend to know what's going on in Watkins' brain. But like over the last year, it does feel a bit like he's reacted quite poorly to competition. He's never really had competition at Villa. He's always available. He's never injured and he always plays and he's always been really good. Like the numbers for at least those 2 seasons, so we speak for themselves. And then Duran really comes on. And Watkins is like, probably he, I'll say didn't enjoy the competition, but he didn't react positively in terms of his form. He probably reacted negatively. And then Rashford took that on a notch. And you could tell Watkins was really annoyed. He did an interview, right? And he was like, I was fuming that I didn't get to start against PSG. But I mean, Rashford took the team and took the attack to new levels. Rashford made Watkins look quite slow, genuinely. I didn't think that would happen because Watkins is not a slow player. But you watch Rashford take the lid off a defence. And I was at Villa Park for the Club Brugge home leg in the knockouts, and he got a man sent off after 5 minutes by running in behind, and the guy just hauled him down. It's like it just takes the lid off teams, and I don't feel like Watkins has ever really recovered. And as fans watching the games as well, he looks slower now to us because Rashford showed us what genuine speed is. It's really weird.
Yeah,
Rashford has like warped our view of it all.
It is strange. I've got a couple more stats that I wanted to throw at you and see your sort of reaction to it. So his shots on target have gone from 1.3 to 0.4, which is the same as Brentford's Yarmulke.
Yeah, I mean, he's not getting shots.
He's not getting shots at all.
But that's not necessarily his fault.
Not purely his fault. No, absolutely not. Only Newcastle, Brighton and Leeds are taking their shots from further away from goal than Aston Villa this season. You're at 18.4 yards now. Last year it was 16.3. You rank 3rd for passes into the final third, which is quite interesting. 6th for passes into the penalty area, but 16th for key passes. So you're getting the ball into the final third quite effectively, but actually the final pass to create the angle, to put someone into space for an effort is just not happening right now.
Correct.
I've got a couple of ideas, and as the non-Aston Villa fan, I thought I'd put mine out there first, and then we'll actually get the expert Villa view. In terms of what to do to change it, does Ian Maatsen need to start over Luca Dean?
Yes.
Do you think as well that Pau Torres' passing from deep might be a key asset in terms of speeding up the play a little bit?
Probably.
Those were my kind of 2 ideas. Other than that, with your squad, it's like get Harvey Elliott and Jadon Sancho involved more. And other than that, I'm kind of a bit lost.
Play some wingers would have been my kind of suggestion.
Bit of wing play, is it? Bit of wing play. Ever heard of it?
Someone wide, because as you're saying, Luca Dean and Matty Cash are perfectly feasible Premier League players. Yeah. But in terms of the way that Villa are operating, like, it's one thing having 4 central midfielders, across there. And look, Emery plays that kind of strange 4-2-2-2 system at times, or kind of, he plays kind of wide midfielders who have played centrally. And Jacob Ramsey felt like quite a nice fit for that. Emi Buendia doesn't. Like, I like Emi Buendia, and I've always thought he's quite a nice number 10, but Morgan Rogers is fitting into that gap. There needs to be some width in this team, surely, to try and take it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Bit of width, bit of pace, something like that, or just genuine wing play. And you're absolutely right. Maatsen should be in the team. There's a lot here that is going against Emery, but some of this is on him. I don't know exactly what the percentage split is, but all those issues I talked about in pre-season, they bled into the start of the campaign, and I had a lot of sympathy for Emery and for the players for having such a really difficult summer. And going into that Crystal Palace game the day before deadline day, and Emi Martinez is sat by the phone waiting for a call from Ruben Amorim, and you're having to chuck Marco Bizot in there and creating that iconic silly quote. This is not like not an acceptable way to do business at all. Like, we were not ready to play a football game. Could we just not have postponed it? You know what I mean? It's very difficult. So I have some sympathy during that period. I also have some sympathy for things like, I don't know how this happened, but Villa rocked up to, nearly said Goodison Park there. What's it called? the Hill Dickinson Stadium.
Yeah.
It's going to take
Dixie.
It's going to take a while to get used to that one. They rocked up to that was game 3, whichever one it was. All 4 senior central midfielders were injured. Like, Tielemans came off at half time, and Onana, Camara, and Barkley all missed the game, full stop. So you were down to McGinn and Lamar Bogart. It's like, how's this happened in week 3? Yeah, there's a few things here that have gone against him, but for the love of God, bless him, Emi Buendia not the answer. We know that. We know that's a fact. We know that. We've got to stop doing that.
We know that because he's tried to loan him out for the last 2 seasons, right? Like, this isn't rocket science.
It's not.
Because we know that Emery didn't think he was good enough for this team because he sent him out on loan.
Yeah, got rid of him last year. It's a bit like that Simpsons meme of Barney creeping out, throwing Barney out the bar, and he just turns up behind him again.
Back in.
The second one is, I think benching Maatsen is a big mistake. There's no pace in the team outside of him, and there's no genuine overlap and width in the team outside of him. I think Emery has gone a little bit cautious and conservative there by playing the better defensive fullback in Luca Dean and the more experienced head, maybe. But losing Maatsen and his overlap ability has been quite painful. And the complete dropping of Pau Torres has also been quite curious, because that's not to say that Mings doesn't have his qualities, and he certainly does. I'm sure you noticed his box defending. He was the reason that Villa didn't even lose that game, despite being against 10 men at the weekend, because his ability to hang with Dan Ballard, to head away long throws and corners, he's brilliant in the box. There's always a place for that, particularly in this like set-piece pilled world we live in right now. So that's great, but he is like... Torres is Emery's guy. He's the conductor, and he's just been almost cast aside. I mean, I expect he'll play against Bologna, like he played against Brentford in the Cup. That's the role right now. It's been quite alarming, I think, probably for Emery to just turn on Pau Torres in such a fashion.
Absolutely. I mean, and the most concerning thing for Villa is that your fixtures have been against Newcastle, who finished 5th last year, obviously, Brentford finished 10th, Palace 12th, Everton 13th, and Sunderland that are newly promoted. It's not the easiest run, but it's definitely not the hardest as well. And you've only created more than 1 XG in 2 of those games. You've created less than 0.6 in 3 of them. It is a little bit troubling, and I suppose we might as well look to the further future.
Just on the fixtures. So Newcastle,
who were going through turmoil transfer-wise at the time.
They
didn't have a striker.
It was not great. But Ezri Konsa did get sent off, and that did completely kill the attacking threat. Palace is not easy because Glasner is Emery's kryptonite. So any Palace game is a 3-0 loss. That's a standard. That's in the rules. So that was never going to work.
Brentford, Everton, Sunderland.
Brentford was a disaster. Everton was a disaster. And Sunderland was a disaster. But the worst situation Villa can be in right now is having 70% of the ball against a team that block up.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just actually begging, which sounds ridiculous, begging for a game where Rodgers can get on the ball in transition.
Well, you might get it. You might get it at the weekend, because I don't think Marcus Silva's Fulham will come in there and just block the middle. There will be parts of that. Berger and Lukic in the centre of the park will try and shield.
Yeah.
But Fulham won't look to just sit in and have 30% possession. I mean, maybe they should, but they won't.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Going further afield or looking further ahead, there's always a risk of talking about this, but the speculation is at the moment in terms of Monchi's potential replacement if he does lose his job, that it will be Roberto Olabe from Real Sociedad, who lost his job, left Real Sociedad earlier this summer. Is that someone that fills you with excitement for the future? Because Real Sociedad have had a brilliant last few years, up until last year, where they've lost a number of key players in that summer as well. He's been linked with Arsenal, he's been linked with Real Madrid in the past. Is that an exciting potential appointment?
I mean, I think so. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know his work inside out, but I think Real Sociedad have done some really good transfer business in the last 5 years or so. And some of the deals that he has struck have been particularly clever. And I like the fact that he's been able to scout very far and very wide. He picked Alexander Isak up off Dortmund for 15 million. That's great. He picked up Kubo. That was a bit of a diamond in the rough. But also, like, He was happy to go and get Ori Oskarsson from Copenhagen. He was happy to go and get Arsene Zakarian from Dynamo Moscow. He's willing to go and find. And Villa have been a bit like
safe.
Let's go to Spain and have a look at the players there. That has been a bit of that, right? Because Monchi and Emery and Vidagani, who's the head of operations above football, they're quite Spanish orientated, right? And a lot of Emery's scouts are from his time, Villarreal and a few other clubs, and coaches are too, so they're going to know the Spanish players. So it'd be quite nice to have a bit more of a wider focus, I think. The work he's done seems to be pretty good. There's
great progress from the academy players as well.
Yeah. There's a really good blog. It's by Billy Carpenter, as an Arsenal fan. I don't know if you've seen him on Twitter.
No.
He used to run a blog called Edu's Barbecue, but I think it's had to change name now because Edu's left. So it must be Berta's Barbecue or something. I don't know. He does incredibly in-depth stuff looking at all these, and he did like 8,000 words on directors of football when Arsenal were in the period of changeover. He's a very big fan of Olabe, so I am quite excited about that. That's a nice seal of approval. Also have a contact at Real Sociedad, and I messaged him earlier to say, what do you think? And he said, I've only met him a few times because he was on the way out, but he's got a hell of an aura, is what he said.
Brilliant.
I was like, cool.
That bodes well.
Yeah.
And in terms of what... It seems almost ridiculous to talk about it, but Unai Emery, do you think there is a scenario in 10 games' time where he's under pressure for his job? Do you think he could walk? What are your thoughts about Unai Emery?
Yeah, he's very embedded in the club. You probably struggle to find me another manager with more power at a modern football club. Villa are very much against the grain in terms of the way they're set up. It is not a case of the director of football sets the tone and the style of play, and then he hires a coach underneath to carry the principles, and then all the scouting and all the recruitment work is done outside of that. Emery's at the heart of everything. Like, as much as you might want to blame or praise Monchi for some of the deals that he has done, everything has been okayed and rubber stamped by Unai Emery. Their general process was that Monchi and the scouts would do a short list of 10 players for Emery based on a skill set that Emery had requested. So maybe he would say, well, I want a defensive-minded right back that can tuck into a back three, make sure he's good on the ball. Monchi and the scouting team would take him 10 players, and then they would whittle that down, and Emery would pick one. He's at the heart of it all.
Or wouldn't pick one in the right back situation.
Hate them all. Goodbye. He's at the heart of it all, and it's not a simple case of remove the coach if you wanted to. This is like, he's built all of this. This is all him. And he's paid extremely well to do this job. And he has, what's that when I say this phrase? He has allies everywhere. I don't mean that as in like, he's
trying to create camps,
it's not that at all. It's just that like the whole thing has been geared towards him. So at the very first sign of falter, of difficulty, and it really is the very first hiccup in what is nearly 3 years of just relentless progress and brilliance, you're not going to, I know that managers don't last that long these days, but I don't think anyone's particularly interested in seeing Unai Emery removed from his position. I think everybody's just kind of patiently waiting for this to sort itself out. And on that note, like, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that Villa's attack, while it's been completely blunt, it is in a stage of complete reconstruction.
It's been decimated.
Yeah, the Brentford front four was Marlon, Sancho, Elliott, and Guesson. Thank you, Jack. None of those players played for Aston Villa in 2024. Not one of them was contracted to the club. So this is what happens, obviously, when you sell Diaby and you sell Duran, and then you replace them with Asensio, Rashford on loan, and then you don't sign many in the summer except for Guesson. Like, it's fine. It's what happens. But like, baby steps here for the attack. You have to understand and you have to realise, and Villa fans have to remind themselves that like the attack that they've been witnessing, this really anemic and horrible attack over the first 5 games that has struggled to score goals. It's not like it's the plan. The plan is for Jadon Sancho to have Ian Maatsen wrapping around the left-hand side and overlapping, and that's where Sancho shines, when he's got a good overlapping fullback, and he can creep into the box and create his little yard of space, and Harvey Elliott tucking in from the right-hand side onto his left foot, who's a very, very good player. And then hopefully that might take a bit of the focus away from Morgan Rogers, who is currently being double and triple teamed because no one thinks that John McGinn and Luca Dean are going to do them any damage, which is the correct assumption. Maybe when these guys all settle in this attack will look very, very different, and just by rights, it will just be better.
Yeah.
I think I kind of have to acknowledge that, because I can't really go the whole podcast, talking about the issues without acknowledging that right now, Villa are having to wait to see what they've actually planned come to fruition. And it's at the moment with Elliott and Sancho, it's fitness based, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Jack, from a sort of looking ahead to the weekend perspective, a lot of people will be listening to this and watching this on Friday. From a Fulham perspective, do you think you guys have got the tools to kind of exploit Villa's kind of period of meh?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this, right? Like, I was thinking about it from the perspective of it might be the best thing in the world from a Fulham perspective that the Villa play Bologna on Thursday, because even if what we see, what Sam's talking about there, which I think is absolutely spot on, even if we see Martson start that game, we see Jadon Sancho start that game, and Villa play quite well, are they going to have to rotate again back to the old guard in order to play the game at the weekend?
Stuck in the wrong rotation pattern.
Yeah, or almost exactly that, right? Like, so I actually think this game might come at quite a nice time for Fulham, but equally, as in, to go back to something Sam said right at the very beginning, I run a podcast called Fulhamish, which is based on the definition of grabbing glory from the elements of defeat and grabbing defeat from the elements of glory as well. So I'm sure that we will be the ones to snap this run at the same time.
Okay, well, Aston Villa fans, if you're listening to this and need a little bit of positivity, remember how rubbish Crystal Palace were in the first few weeks of last season, and Bournemouth, and Palace ended up winning the FA Cup, and Bournemouth finished on a real high note throughout the entire campaign. So it is incredibly early days, but guys, that has been The Truth, Season 2, Episode 4. What the hell is happening at Aston Villa? We tried our best. There is so much going on in the boardroom, in the changing room, so many different ideas about how to fix it, but time will be a great healer. Thank you so much, Sam, for joining me today.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you very much, Jack, for running the show as ever.
Always a pleasure, Dukes.
Didn't call him the Overlord.
Didn't call him the Overlord.
Did he pay you?
Much prefer that. I've paid Dougie off.
And thank you so much for listening or watching the show. And we'll be back next week with another episode of The Truth. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching another episode of The Truth on my channel. If you've enjoyed it, let me know what you want us to cover next week in the comments section. We'll do the best one. We'll shout out the best one too. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.